Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Anna from Cask Quill. Today I have a list of nonfiction books that I would like to recommend to you. Nonfiction November is something that people do to encourage more reading of nonfiction books during the month of November. Some people choose to read only nonfiction books during November. Others just like to sneak one or two into their reading time. But you can kind of do it whatever way you want to. In fact, it doesn't even have to be November for you to read one of these books. You can read them anytime that you're in the mood for something that is nonfiction. A lot of people don't read nonfiction because it is or seems boring to them, or sort of dense or textbook-like. And some of it is, obviously, but so is some fiction. And if you just kind of pick out the right nonfiction for you, there's a lot of stuff that is really engaging and interesting, whether that be about a topic that you're interested in, or maybe an author that you like their fiction books. They might have a fiction book, or a nonfiction book that might interest you. So I have a few that I would like to recommend. First, I just want to let you know that I'm having like a super kind of day today. It snowed a little bit last night here in Minnesota, and it's actually gone now, but this morning I woke up and I was just like, no, I don't want it. I'm not ready. I don't want it to be snowing yet. Gosh. 'Cause fall is so great, and now it's just gonna be like cold and snowy, but whatever. I shouldn't even be complaining because it's gone, and it just looks like fall now. So I'm over it, but that doesn't mean that I'm not still like just sitting around working on new mug designs with my Quidditch blanket. So yeah, if you want to hear about my nonfiction recommendations, get cozy, get under your Quidditch blanket or whatever you might have on hand, and saddle up, because I'm gonna tell you about them right now. Okay, first on the list is a book I actually have not even finished reading yet, and that is In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. This book is a book about it's a true crime that is kind of, I wouldn't call it scary per se, but it's like, you know how a lot of if you've read true crime before or watched like Dateline or something, kind of what you're dealing with. It can be a little bit gross or creepy or whatever, and this book has some of that. I haven't actually, like I said, I haven't finished this book yet, but I have really been enjoying it so far. I don't remember why I took a break from it. I think I had to start reading something else or something, so I had to set this one aside and just haven't returned to it yet, but I plan to because it's real good. Next on the list we have, there's a lot of really good travel writing that I enjoy, that is nonfiction as well. So the first one that I would recommend, and the only one I have here to show, is The Year of Living Danishly by, I think, Helen Russell, yeah. This book is about a family that moves to Denmark for like a year, I think it is, because the husband gets a job working for Lego there, and so they decide to move there for a year and try it out and see what it's like. So it's kind of about the adjustment process to living in a new place, and a little bit about different Danish customs that would be unfamiliar to someone moving from England like she was. She spends some time on the concept of hygge in this book as well, which is probably something that you've heard of before. That's sort of like art of being cozy that's really popular right now in other places in the world as well. The only thing I didn't love about this book is that sometimes it can come off like a little bit, not whiny, but like, maybe whiny. I can't remember now. It's been a little while since I've read it, but on the whole, I really enjoyed it and I would recommend it to you, but just be aware that that's maybe something that you'll encounter from time to time in this book, is just like a little bit of lack of awareness or something. On the whole, it's really quite good, and I think that it might, you know, make you interested in visiting Denmark sometime. I think if I remember right, it's sort of separated into months of the year. So like she moved there for a year, so then there was, yeah, so each month has kind of a theme. So January is Hygge and Home, February is Forgetting the 9 to 5, and so on. So like for each month that she was there, there's like a little story through that timeline, and then also something, you know, that kind of binds it all together, the topic of that particular chapter, which I thought was a cool way to set up the book. And in addition to this one, I would also recommend books like Eat, Pray, Love, which I thought I would never like for some reason. I think I just thought it was something else, like not for me, but I actually really enjoyed that book, and that was another one that I found to be fun in the sense of like a sort of travel or moving or different culture exploration. So that one is one I would recommend. And then the last I would recommend from that sort of same genre would be Names for the Sea, Strangers in Iceland by Sarah Moss. That one is very, very similar to The Year of Living Danishly, because that is basically the same type of setup where the family is moving for a job for a year, except not to Denmark, to Iceland. And so that, I read it, I had heard good things about it before, and kind of, if you liked this book, read this. And so it had been on my list, but then I went to Iceland this summer, and so I wanted to quickly read that book before actually visiting Iceland, which was kind of nice. I'm glad I did, because there's some things that I wouldn't have known ahead of time if it weren't for having read that book. So that's another one that I would recommend if you are interested in that sort of genre at all. And departing from that, but kind of keeping with the sort of like autobiographical sort of books, Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings is such a good book. I think this is probably a new favorite book for me as of earlier this year when I read it for the first time. It's just like so good, you know, like you hear people recommend it a lot, or you've probably heard of it before, and you know, you just don't know, like, okay, well, what makes it so good. I don't even know if I could tell you. Like, it's just, the story is so gripping and real and like vivid, you know. It's like a book you kind of can't put down, which I don't think I've ever really experienced with an autobiography before. I mean, there's been many that I've liked, or not just like autobiographies, but like any sort of like memoir type book. To me, I've enjoyed many of them, but I've never really had one where I'm like, I have to keep reading to know what happens. And I mean, obviously her writing is just so amazing and beautiful. And then the story itself, like I said, is so interesting and crazy and just like painful. And, you know, I don't know. I think if you choose to read any of these, that probably this one would be the one I would most be shoving into your hands. It's really good. Then the next book I have for you, actually there's two here that I will sort of compare. They're both very similar. We'll start with Upstream by Mary Oliver. So this is a collection of essays. Mary Oliver is a poet, and there is, I think, some poetry in here. Just a few lines here and there, I think. Or, you know, like in different little interludes. But for the most part, it's nature essays, you know, like essays on Mary Oliver's relationship with the natural world, and then also different poets that she is sort of interacting with through her stories. So, for example, there's a section about Edgar Allan Poe. There's some about Thoreau, and I just think it reminded me so much of this other book that I really like called Dwellings by Linda Hogan, and that's a spiritual history of the living world. And I read this in a literature of nature class that I took in college, and I loved it, and I've read it many times since then because it's just so, it's like reading poetry, but they're essays, you know what I mean? In that, like, you don't have it's like very poetic, lyrical language, but it's not in verse. So they are in like an essay format, but I think it's that sort of topic that is really interesting to me, is like the way that we relate to the world around us, specifically like the natural world, and like reading about these different people's relationships. Okay, sorry, I just had my groceries delivered, so as I was saying, I just think it's really interesting to read about different people's relationships to nature, or, you know, animals or trees, you know, whatever it is. And it's just such a beautiful thing to read about for me. So these would be two that I would recommend then, Upstream and Dwellings. See if you don't think that they are kind of similar, or if you're not reminded a little bit of one or the other when and if you read them. I would be interested to know if you experience that at all. And then the last section of books that I wanted to talk about are books about writing. Even if you're not a writer, many people who are readers are at least interested in writing and interested in the writing process. Some of these are going to be more for those type of people. Some are going to be for people who are actually interested in writing, whether that's whatever it is, you know, any type of creative writing. If that interests you, I have some recommendations. So the first one is that type of a book, like for writers. This is called Writing Down the Bones by Natalie Goldberg. And this is a very easy read. Each little snippet is like only a page or two long for the most part. And they're just full of different like writing exercises and ideas, and like advice for being disciplined about actually writing, or ideas for like how to create a writing life, so to speak. Two other such books I would recommend would be, I think it's called The Writing Life. Me saying that reminded me of it. I think it's called The Writing Life by Annie Dillard. I'll put the actual name either up here on the screen or down below if I'm not correct. And then the other one would be Bird by Anne Lamott. And both of those are similar in that they will really inspire you to start writing or get back to writing or whatever, if you've ever kind of been interested in that before. So those are some of the best ones that I've read on that topic. But the absolute best one I've read on that topic is one of, if not maybe the favorite nonfiction book that I have. I'm trying to weigh if I can really say that or not. It might be. This might be my favorite. It's Stephen King's On Writing. This is widely considered to be one of, if not the best, book about writing by a writer. Is there such a thing as a book about writing by not a writer? because wouldn't you have become a writer by the end of writing a book about writing? Anyway, this book is really good. It's part like how-to guide / inspiration / memoir about Stephen King's life and writing journey. And all of those things are just brought off so well. He is so engaging in this book and just like funny, and there's just crazy stuff that goes on. Like, if you are not a fan of Stephen King, you will be after you read this book. Even if you've read none of his other books, because actually this is the first Stephen King book I ever read, was this one. I think, unless I read The Stand before that. I think this was the first one I ever read, and that's what made me want to read some of his other books. As I've talked about before, I'm not big into scary books. And so I had never really read any of his books thinking that like they would just be too much for me. And I still haven't read very many of them because I think some of them would be too much for me, but I've read some of the ones that are a little milder or not really scary at all, like 11/22/63 and The Stand. So this one is definitely like up there with I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. These, like, if I could evangelize about two and like make you read two of these books, those would be the two. But this one is really quite good, and I would recommend it to really anyone, even if you're not like a big writer, even if you're not particularly a big reader. It's just a super interesting book to read. Like, he talks about kind of what writing is like for him, and how he does it, and there's, you know, some advice, there's some tips about, you know, like how to go about writing your book, that you should be reading just like 1 million books a year. He talks about like the favorite like 3,000 books he's read recently. Anyway, you should totally read this book because if nothing else, Stephen King really loves corgis, and corgis are cute. Look. If you follow Stephen King on Twitter, you may be familiar with his corgi, Molly, aka the Thing of Evil. If you're not familiar, you should probably do the thing and get familiar because she's pretty cute. It just occurred to me that I don't have any here with me. I actually don't think I own any of his books, but we'll have to remedy that at some point. Excuse me, sorry. David Sedaris is another amazing nonfiction writer that I would recommend. He does kind of creative nonfiction essays about his life and whatnot, and oh man, they're so funny. Really, you can't go wrong. I think I would start with, I don't know where I would start. Just whatever is available from the library, I guess. I can't think of one that I haven't really liked. I haven't actually read them all, but close to it. And he's just a really engaging, funny writer. His books are one that I recommend to anyone who's like trying to break a reading slump. Like, if you are just not getting things read and you're feeling like, you know, you open a book and you just stare at the page forever or whatever, I think that his books are really good, like slump busters, that they are so hilarious and just like really light reading, you know. They're sorry, I'm just fidgety right now. They're really, I don't have a book to hold. They're really light, like I said, and just so funny. His writing style is so good. I don't even know how to describe it or like what to say about it, but he just has such a great sense of humor, and I think that you would enjoy reading one of his books if you are in the mood for something a little bit more comedic for your nonfiction November. So that's kind of all I had, I think, on my list to tell you about. If you've read any of these books and you want to talk about them, feel free to let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts on any of these, as they are all ones that I have enjoyed quite a lot, except In Cold Blood, which I haven't finished yet, so I don't have a ton to say about it because I'm not done, obviously. But then also, if you have some recommendations for other people, why don't you leave a few below in the comments so other people can, you know, find even more nonfiction to read. If you're going to be participating in Nonfiction November in any way, let me know in the comments or what your plans are. I don't really know what my own plans are at this point. I'm still reading Strange the Dreamer. I am not really making as much progress with that as I would like. I think partly because I've been kind of busy recently, and partly because, I don't know, it hasn't just like swept me up as much as I was expecting it to, which is maybe like an unfair thing to put on it, because it has been enjoyable. It's not that I've been like, you know, oh, slogging through this again, you know, anything like that. It's just that I didn't get like carried away with it as quickly as I thought I would. It reminds me so much of Name of the Wind, if you've read that. No, it's not an exact copy or anything, but there's just a lot of elements that I think are the same. If you've read both and you would agree or disagree, let me know below. I would be interested to know. But if you plan on doing Nonfiction November, I think I'll probably sneak one in somewhere this November. Probably won't be anything super long. And actually, I've been meaning to reread a couple of these that I was just mentioning. So maybe I'll reread Dwellings, actually, at some point, because it seems like a good fall time read anyway. Let's talk about it in the comments. I would love it if you would like this video if you did enjoy it. Also, you can subscribe to my channel as well if you would like, so that you will be able to see my future videos when they come out. There's also a little alarm bell that you can hit if you want to be notified when I post a new video. I've heard other people talking about how sometimes, even if you're subscribed to a channel, some videos get kind of lost in the shuffle, which has definitely happened to me before with the people that I subscribe to. So if you don't want to miss anything of any of my riveting content, then, you know, hit the little alarm bell button or whatever. And that'll do it for me today. So I will talk to you guys probably next week, and I don't know what we're going to talk about, but it'll be something, and it'll probably be about books, to be honest with you. But until then, I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!